Hello, I'm Philippa Huckle and this is Without Fear or Greed. In this video we're going to learn how our brains process traumatic events and crises, and with that understanding we're going to find out how we can learn better from the past. Because we're human, we have emotions, but extreme emotions can be debilitating. We don't function well and we don't make healthy, calm decisions when we're angry, distraught, grieving or in shock. So our brains have an inbuilt mechanism to help us recover from emotionally distressing events, so we can look back and learn from the past without feeling overwhelmed. This mental mechanism is known as the peak end rule. Whenever a big event happens in our lives, our brains process it by taking the peak of that experience, which is the most intense feeling that had to do with that event, and the end, which is how you feel now. And it merges these two into a mental snapshot, which we store as a memory of the event. Let's see how this works with a significant emotional event like the breakup of a relationship. Of course, when it happens, you feel awful. Your brain takes the peak, which is the most distraught you ever felt about it, and the end, how you're feeling now, and it merges these two into a mental snapshot. In the beginning, every time you look at that snapshot, the breakup is fresh and vivid in your mind. When you think about it, all the intensity of your feelings come flooding back. But as time goes on, it distances you from the intensity of that peak. You become instead far more of the end, which is now. The memory begins to fade. Eventually you get to the point where you remember that you were distraught. You just don't feel like that anymore. That's how time heals. Back when SARS hit Hong Kong, masks were everywhere, public places were deserted, schools were emptied, and honestly, everybody felt very, very afraid. The Hong Kong property market collapsed 70% almost overnight. Global stock markets tumbled. But as the world moved on and put the distance of time between ourselves and SARS, the vividness of those intense emotions faded. Today you can look back on SARS and simply no longer feel the emotion that accompanied it. That is why so many people in Hong Kong say that of course they hope SARS never happens again, but if it does, they will definitely buy property. The point is, with emotion removed, the outcome of the past in hindsight looks so obvious. Take away the cold fear that surrounds any crisis, and with hindsight the opportunities seem so obvious and the threats so minimal. So the peak end rule creates hindsight bias, or the "oh, I knew how it would turn out" effect. Well, hindsight bias is irritating, but it's also dangerous because it can stop you learning a crucial investment lesson. To understand this, remember there are two ways your brain can make a decision. It can either weigh up the facts to formulate an analytical response, for which it uses the front part of your brain, the cortex, or it gets you to respond instinctively and emotionally by reacting to the chemicals secreted by the limbic system of the brain. And these chemicals create the feelings we recognize as emotions. Hindsight's danger is that with the pain of the past blotted away by the peak end rule, it's all too easy to assume you'd act differently next time. But in reality, at the time, in order to grasp opportunities instead of seeing only threats, and to prevent panicked selling during times of crisis, you need to make a mental note now that you will need to overcome the inevitable, powerful feelings of panic and fear that are part and parcel of any crisis. And secondly, take from this the recognition that even the most frightening crises pass. Get a grip on the slippery dangers of hindsight so that after a crisis has subsided, you're not left looking back on a faded snapshot that's lost all its potency and wondering why you could just not see the opportunities at the time. Thanks for listening. I'm Philippa Huckle, and that was Without Fear or Greed, because excellent investing is about more than just the numbers.